a certain element of purity, that is, it is an expression of your true individuality. And then you will experience a much greater joy than you have ever experienced by acting through the lower self alone. There is really no activity you could have that is based on the lower self that would give you the same joy and sense of fulfillment that you get when you feel the flow of the Spirit and you know you are co-creating. And that is why when you get to this point, the activity of expressing your higher being is a reward in itself. And therefore, as Jesus said, do you want your reward in heaven or your reward on earth? And you realize that this is the reward in heaven. And it is higher than any reward you could get on earth. And so, therefore, you can set other people free, you can set yourself free, and you can make this choice to be in a state of, eventually, you can come to being in a state of perpetual openness to the Spirit, where you're not judging or evaluating or analyzing, you're just expressing whatever comes to you. Now I know that some people will immediately say, well, does that mean that these people will do anything they want? And yes, it does mean they will do anything they want, but not anything their egos want. And when people say, oh, he thinks he can do anything he wants, they often mean that these are ego-based people who think they can do anything their ego wants, regardless of the consequences for others. But naturally, when you are acting from your higher self is in a state of oneness, and it does not do something that hurts other people, but it will do something that will disturb or provoke other people, because that might be the only way to have a chance of awakening them. But of course, again, you can say, does your I am presence sit up there and say, aha, I know exactly how to push this person's buttons? No, it doesn't. It just expresses itself. And that expression is so different from the person's level of consciousness that the person experiences it as a provocation. The I am presence is not deliberately seeking to provoke. It is just expressing itself. And that's why you can come to a point where even when people are provoked or become angry or reject you, you're not disturbed by it. You allow them to have their reaction, but you do not let this distract you from being the open door the next time. And so, what does it then take to come to this point where you are the open door and you are expressing an element of your higher being, and therefore expressing the more creative aspects of your divine plan, the higher potential of your divine plan? Well, again, it is a matter of making choices and making more and more conscious choices. And what I submit to you is that you actually come to a point where you need to go through a phase where you become more and more conscious of the fact that you are selecting out, you are selecting away. Many of you have already done this in order to be on the spiritual path, but you can be more conscious of this, where you get a sense that a certain activity you might have participated in, or certain people that you might have spent time with, are actually a distraction. Now, I know that you can go back with a linear mind and say, well, didn't Jesus tell us that we need to come to a point where we look back at our lives and we have no regrets, because whatever we needed to go through was an experience we needed to have? Yes, my beloved, that is true when you look back. But that, of course, doesn't mean that because you don't need to have regrets about what you did previously, that you need to continue to do the same thing for the rest of your life. And so what I'm saying is that when you step into this phase of becoming more conscious, you need to be aware that this planet is a very diversified planet. there are many, many activities on this planet. Some of them can be very exciting, but other activities are deliberately defined by the fallen beings for one purpose only, and that is to distract people from spiritual growth or their divine plan. There are many, many activities on earth that most people think are normal or even genuine or even creative experiences or activities, but their only purpose is really to serve as a distraction that sucks your energy and your attention into doing something that may be fun, that may be rewarding, or that may even seem to be beneficial and altruistic. But for you, it is a distraction that takes you away from focusing your attention on your divine plan and the more creative aspects of it. And so, naturally, all of you have already selected many things out because you felt this wasn't helpful for your spiritual growth. But there are many more activities and attitudes that you can select out as you become more and more conscious and make more and more conscious choices. Even if you don't see, as we have said, you will never see the totality of your divine plan because it is something that actually is determined as you make choices. But nevertheless, you will begin, as you open yourself up to this, even as you work with this concept of what is a distraction, what is not a distraction, you will get more of a sense of focus. Gradually you will gain a more and more clear focus of what it is your particular role to bring forth in this lifetime. And then you get more of a sense that, oh, this activity is actually not supporting what I'm here to do. It's actually taking my awareness and energy away from it, and therefore now is the time you realize suddenly and spontaneously, now is the time to select it away. But this spontaneous realization doesn't come until you consciously decide that you are willing to consider which activities are just a distraction and which are actually part of your divine plan. And so this has many ramifications, and in a sense you could say that for the rest of your life until you ascend, you are going to select certain things out that are no longer compatible with the level of consciousness you have risen to. And so I simply want you to be aware of this need to have this openness to once in a while step back, look at life and see, what is it I am really here to do? Now, many of you have, as part of your path, gone into various activities that you might consider to be spiritual, beneficial, or so forth and so on. And I'm in no way blaming you for having gone into them. But many of you will find that there comes a point where you realize you no longer need this. This is not really why you are here. This is not what you are here to bring forth. You see, when you look at the spiritual or New Age field, how so many people are curiosity seekers. They go into all kinds of, as other masters have said, aura readers and fortune tellers and astrologers and tarot card readers and this and that, past life readers, psychics, whatever have you. And so there's a whole phenomenon out there that is actually presented as spiritual activities, but the main purpose of most of it is simply to distract people, spiritual people, from their spiritual goals and their divine plans. And so, again, you could say for some of you, you might have an awareness of certain past lifetimes, or you might have a curiosity about past lifetimes, but is it really essential for your divine plan that you spend your time and energy on trying to find out who you were in a past life, for example? And there could be many other activities the same way. Many spiritual people have had a phase where they went through, be it astrology, be it numerology, be it any other kind of things, But ultimately there can come this point where you realize, I no longer need this. I no longer need this at my present level of consciousness. And then you can focus more and more. Then there is, of course, another temptation that is out there, because those of you who came as avatars, you came with a desire to change the earth for the better. Now, as this messenger has realized after he received his latest teachings on the primal self, this desire to change the earth for the better was actually what he needed to overcome by coming to earth. He had not overcome this on a natural planet, and so he chose to go down to earth, which is so difficult to change, in order to give himself an extreme opportunity to overcome this desire to change others and to change anything for that matter. You realize, my beloved, that there is a fundamental difference between having an intention of changing other people and then being an open door for your I Am Presence expressing itself through you. This is subtle to understand, because naturally the Ascended Masters would like to see change on earth, would like to see this planet rise to a level where people are not suffering, but are consciously growing spiritually. But we are beyond the dualistic level of consciousness, and therefore we do not have this dualistic intent or the epic mindset of bringing forth some important change. And so there is a difference there, that we have total respect for free will. And so those of you who came to earth with this lower intent, you may say it was a benevolent intent, and I will not dispute that, but it was benevolent not in an ultimate way, because you were not non-attached. And so you came here with this intent, and it is, in a subtle way, a part of the epic mindset. It is not the extreme way that you see in the fallen beings, where you were willing to kill other people in order to further this ultimate cause. You did not believe that the end justifies the means, as the fallen beings do. But nevertheless, you still thought that it was okay for you to sort of push people in gentle ways in order to get them to overcome suffering. And so this is actually what you needed to overcome here on earth. And so you realize that there are many, many causes out there that are defined, that can attract the attention of spiritual people. Because when you become aware that there's a spiritual side to life, there's a spiritual path, there's a potential for manifesting a golden age, then you are tying into that desire that brought you to the planet. And you are therefore reasoning with your outer mind. Sure, I'm here to change planet Earth. I'm here to bring about a positive change. How can I do it? Oh, there's this cause, there's that cause, there's the next cause. And many of you have had a phase where there were so many things you wanted to do to improve conditions on Earth that you actually wore yourself out. You scattered your attention because there were so many causes you wanted to help promote. And so you realize, my beloved, that this is not what can take you to the higher levels of your divine plan. Because none of you are here to solve every problem on earth. None of you can do this, because when you are in physical embodiment, you have the limitations of time and space. Each day still only has 24 hours. You need to sleep some of those hours. You still only have certain amount of waking hours, certain amount of attention, certain amount of energy that you can put on something. And so what I'm saying is, it is perfectly fine that as you are at the beginning stages of the path, you get very enthusiastic and you want to help with this, that, and the next thing, and so you take on too much. But as you begin to move into this more conscious phase of your divine plan, the more creative phase, you need to take a look at even the causes that are out there, that you can say, they are not distractions created by the fallen beings, they are worthy causes. And perhaps there are some people that have it as their divine plan to pursue those causes, but you need to consider, is it the higher levels of my divine plan that I devote my energy to these causes? And when you begin to honestly consider this, and you are willing to select out the ones that are not a part of your higher divine plan, then you will begin to gain a more clear vision of what is your focus, what is your specialty, what is the area where you can bring forth change. And then you can gradually begin to select away all of these other activities that are not contributing to that. And you will then find that your mind will become more and more attuned, more and more focused, more and more aligned, more and more in harmony with your I Am Presence. And therefore you will feel a greater and greater sense of joy, a sense of determination, but it is not really an outer will. It is simply a spontaneous desire to focus on this area and to bring this forth. And this, my beloved, should not be construed to mean that you become the kind of person who, like you see in the concept of the mad professor who is constantly sitting in his laboratory writing down formulas on the blackboard and constantly trying to make this determination, and he is ignoring everything else and cannot do any other activity. You can still, as we have said, live a relatively normal, active life in society. You are doing what you need to do, perhaps to make a living, raise your children, whatever this may be. It is just that in your mind you know that there is a certain activity that is the main focus. And so you may also know that raising your children is part of your divine plan. But beyond that, you may also have a certain area you need to study because you have the potential to bring forth some new ideas. Well, these are not incompatible. And so you just realize that this is part of my divine plan. Maybe my job and my career is part of my divine plan. My family and children are part of my divine plan. And then I have this area of study. But, my beloved, doing this course or doing that course or running here or running there, this is not part of my divine plan, so I can select these things out. Now again, there's a balance to be found. You cannot always be focused on one thing. Well, as you grow higher and higher in consciousness, you can become more and more focused, but you still need to have some time to relax, to do something different. As this messenger was reminded earlier today, the Buddha, it is said, reaches the stage of enlightenment. He goes into nirvana, he comes back out of nirvana, and then he goes out and creates an ashram and he starts teaching. And many students come to him and he is teaching. Now this is the Buddha who has supposedly reached enlightenment. But nevertheless, the Buddha taught for 9 months of the year, and then for 3 months of the year, he was in seclusion, in meditation. In other words, he was doing something different. He was relaxing from the teaching activity. So again, you need to be realistic and recognize that no matter how focused you are, in order to live a relatively active, normal life, you need to have time also to do something that is simply relaxing. You're getting your mind off the other activities in your life because, at least until you reach the very highest levels of awareness, The mind needs a break. In fact, I would say that even at the 144th level of awareness, the mind cannot be focused on the same thing all the time. You need to step away. You need to have a break. You will know if you read about, for example,